Hello, everyone, and welcome to this second lecture on Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses. In the previous lecture, we had completed the first section. I told you that there are three sections in the poem. In the previous class, we had taken into account a small but comprehensive background of the Victorian era. We had dealt with the first part of Ulysses, that is where Ulysses talks about his own past exploits, and Ulysses then recounts his present boredom with his life. Now, today we will move on to the second part where he talks about his son Telemachus, and the third part where Ulysses proposes to venture into the unknown. So, this will be today's discussion. Okay. Now, let me quickly share the screen and let's begin. This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the sceptre and the isle, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor by slow prudence, to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Now, look, what does what does Ulysses over here say? This is my son, mine own Telemachus. So look, Ulysses has a sense of self. He has a sort of he is in a mood of self celebration to such a degree where he is enmeshed or engrossed in uh, himself so much that he thinks that, like his island, like his kingship, his son also belongs to him. So look, there is the language over here is one of possession. This is my son, mine own Telemachus. So he claims Telemachus to be his own property. So he has a say over what Telemachus thinks, does, etc., etc. This is his implication, that since I am abandoning my role as a king, therefore it is my humble and sincere request to you that you accept Telemachus as your next king. Because you see, just like me, Telemachus is a person is who belongs to me. So he is going to be a good proxy for myself, as well as Telemachus will be a very useful tool to serve the purposes of the island, which I myself cannot serve because of my wanderlust. So look, this is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the isle. So look, the expressions have not changed. The I, my, mine. These expressions have not changed. So Ulysses is still invested in himself. Ulysses, I am not only leaving him the island to rule over it, but I am leaving unto him the responsibility. Scepter is like a what should I call it? It's scepter is like a small baton kind of thing, which you'll see that the English monarchy still holds the scepter. Scepter is a symbolic, uh, it is a symbol of power. Okay, that is, if you hold the scepter, you hold the power over a country, a certain country. Just like everything has a seal, na? That is, say, imagine the Prime Minister of India has a seal. So once he signs on some documents and puts the seal, that seal gives it authority. That seal gives it the paper its authority. Similarly, what happens is that with the scepter, the authority comes, the power comes. To whom I leave the scepter and the isle. So Ulysses is not only bequeathing to Telemachus his own island, his own area of rule, but also his own uh, power of ruling. That is his implication. But the problem is that Ulysses does not realize that kingship is not determined by your heredity. Kingship cannot be bequeathed. Power cannot be bequeathed. power has to be appropriated. That is, imagine if, say, I have a son or I have a daughter, and tomorrow I tell my son or daughter that, uh, all right, after me, you will be taking my classes. Now, there is no guarantee whether my son or daughter would study English literature in the first place. And even if they do, there is no guarantee that they will become teachers. Even if they become teachers, there is no guarantee that they will be able to teach like me. They will be perhaps better, perhaps worse, perhaps something else, but definitely not me. So the fact that Ulysses thinks that he has the right of relinquishing and the right of bequeathing, this is very interesting. So there is a sort of entitlement in Ulysses because he thinks that uh, he is entitled because all the uh, adventures that he has gone on, all the endeavors that he has performed. And then look, Ulysses tries to establish Telemachus. As the next ruler of the island, Ulysses tries to establish Telemachus. And how does he do it? Well loved of me. Look, I love him, and therefore you, being my people, must also love him, or should also love him. Discerning to fulfill this labor. So, what is a labor for Ulysses might not be a labor for Telemachus. What is a labor of loathing for Ulysses might be a labor of love for Telemachus. For example, say the college where I teach. Say I go there, I take 3, 4 classes per day, maybe sometimes even five. So when I have, say, on certain days, like on Thursday, I have back to back 4 classes without a single break. Now, after I have finished the 4 classes, I feel absolutely exhausted. But deep in my heart, my throat aches. I am always parched because I have to speak so much. Sometimes I have small backaches because I stand up for 4 hours and I keep doing board work, etc., etc. But even after all of that, there is a deep-seated pleasure in my heart. So once I'm done with the 4 classes, the moment I go to a nearby tea shop and I am having tea and maybe chatting with my colleagues, I am very content. Why? Because that is a labor of love. It's a labor. Let's acknowledge. Talking straight away for 4 hours, and maybe in one batch I am teaching, say, Thomas Hardy. In another batch, maybe I am teaching Keats. In another batch, maybe I am teaching Bertolt Brecht. And maybe in another batch, I am teaching uh, something like, say, Shakespeare. So it's very diverse. The range of the topics is very diverse. So what happens is that despite this diversity and this toil, so I have to keep on shifting my thought process as well from class to class. So what happens is that it becomes very interesting as an endeavor that I am shifting between 10 things. I am working really hard in those 4 hours, those four back to back hours. Sometimes, if I have a break, then that's a good thing because it gives me a little bit time to freshen up, to give my throat a little rest and all. But even if I have to work for 4 hours straight, if I even if I have to talk for 4 hours straight to a huge classroom where we do not even have a mic, that becomes a challenge. But that becomes a labor of love. It is not a labor of loathing. So for Ulysses, it becomes a labor of loathing. For example, I know of many people. I have taught in so many colleges, and I have often seen that many people go to the classroom, they dictate, they sit there, and they just give a summary of the text and etc. etc. This is not to criticize them, but this is This just goes on to show that the same thing which is a labor of love for me is perhaps a labor of loathing for them. Now, that is the sad reality of life. That is, you'll have to realize that the same thing which gives you joy might not give joy to another person. So, look, when Ulysses says, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill this labor, it is in this word labor, the attitude of Ulysses becomes very clear. That is, he suggests that for him it is a labor, but for Telemachus it will be a labor of love, perhaps. It is a huge work, but maybe Telemachus has the patience, the prudence, the perseverance, and the uh, necessary mental fortitude to tackle the situation. And these are all the Victorian virtues which can be enumerated in this case. Now, look, he says, by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people. So, what happens is that if you read these lines very carefully, you'll realize that deep down, somewhere, Ulysses has a sense of jealousy. That is, Ulysses cannot quite accept the fact that his son, Telemachus, has all the qualities that are there that are necessary for becoming a good ruler. Whereas Ulysses while a great adventurer, while a great warrior, is not perhaps suited to be a great king. This is something that is very interesting. You see it in Shakespeare's Macbeth as well, because there we often talk about why didn't Duncan choose Macbeth and why did he choose Malcolm? Because Malcolm is not a very good fighter. But often we forget or tend to forget one thing, that it takes more than just military prowess to become a good king. And perhaps Duncan saw the fact that Macbeth was a good warrior, but he did not have the compassion, the sense of justice that is necessary to become a good king. And perhaps that is why Duncan did not choose Macbeth. Now, this is another aspect of the text itself. So, this becomes a very interesting observation as well. Ulysses might be a great warrior, he might be a great adventurer, but certainly he is not a great king. But Telemachus, while he lacks the capacity to be perhaps a great warrior, to be perhaps a great adventurer, is perhaps a great king. Because he can bring the stability, the status quo, the stasis, the stable foothold that is necessary for a city state to thrive. So look, he says, by slow prudence to make a rugged people, to make mild a rugged people. So while Ulysses is in the attitude of complaining that his people are a rugged people, a savage people, Telemachus has the patience, prudence, perseverance, and propensity to slowly, by degrees, make these rugged people mild, and through soft degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. So look, while Ulysses cannot quite channelize the people's uh, attitudes to make them into something useful, Telemachus has that capacity. He has that power. He has that prudence to channelize or utilize a person's potential. Now, this becomes a very interesting aspect. And look, he says, subdue them to the useful and the good. Already, we are speaking in the language of utilitarianism. That is, whatever is useful is good, whatever is good is useful. And therefore, this is In the Victorian parlance, the pinnacle of human achievement. That is, you turn something which is rugged, which is absolutely uncontrollable, into something which is both good and both useful. Because in the Victorian parlance of utilitarianism, everything that is good is useful, and everything that is useful is good. The two are complementary terms. And then look what does he say. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties, decent not to fail, in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. So look, now Ulysses says that most blameless is he. Why does he say this thing? It is rather weird that Ulysses calls his son most blameless. Because as I have already told, that Ulysses desecrated the temple of a god, and therefore he was cursed that he will become a perpetual wanderer, not being able to find his home. Now, what happens is that unlike Ulysses's war crimes, unlike Ulysses's trickery of the Trojan horse, etc., unlike Ulysses's trickery to make Achilles fight and all, Telemachus is not so very shrewd or cunning. He is a straight, decent man who basically is an honest man, who is patient, and who is fulfilling of the regular duties of life. You will see that in life you will meet with many sorts of people. Now you will see that one of those types would be that there are certain people who are maybe geniuses, maybe very, very talented, but very, very unorganized. And then you will meet certain people who are very organized, very calm, composed, etc. Like those of my students who are, uh, I mean, I have seen students who are very, very intelligent, very perceptive and all, but often I see that they don't do really well in, say, competitive exams, in government service exams, because I think that these people uh, who are a little bit exceptional, they often are very perceptive and all right, but one thing is very true with them, that is they lack that patience, that perseverance to pursue a thing for a long time. Like I had a student, he went for WBCs. So first time he went, he cracked the preliminaries, and then he went for the mains. And in the mains, he got just by 4 5 marks. He was left. Okay, and he sat the next time. The next time he could not even crack the prelims, and then he absolutely quit the idea. But then again, I have a student who tried 3 4 times. He was never really that perceptive, never really that intelligent. He was a hard worker. He had that perseverance, that patience, that calmness of mind, that desire to work hard. He always told me, "Sir, if I don't understand the thing by reading it once, I'll try reading it twice. If I don't understand by reading it twice, I'll try reading it thrice. And by the seventh or the eighth time, I am certain that I will understand it." And this determination, you see, That inspired me a lot. I myself am not that much organized in my life, but the thing is that I always get inspired by my students. And this guy is now in the West Bengal police service, perhaps. He is a Group B candidate. Group B, as far as I know, is the police service. Yes, perhaps he is in Group B. Yes, I'll have to ask him. But last time I heard he had cracked Group B. So in any case, so this becomes a very interesting um, lesson for all of us. Most blameless is he, centered in the sphere of common duties. So you see, this is a very interesting outlook, because what happens is that no, this is a very interesting idea, because you see, you'll see that some people, they are very good at the daily works of life. Uh, like I have seen that in my college there is a person. He's so very meticulous with all the data regarding the students' progression and all. So he used to do all that work, and till 2019, you will find that every data he used to do that work till 2019. Now he is in a different department. Now, till 2019, I see that all the data is so very beautifully organized. And after that, everybody had to follow the kind of pattern that he had made. So that became very, very interesting. You'll see that there are people who are so very uh, adept in the daily runnings of the society, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness. So Telemachus would not let his idea of the self cloud his judgment in order to do offices of tenderness. You see, judgment is also an office of tenderness. It is very easy to punish someone for a crime that that person has committed, but it is very difficult to do justice. Revenge is easy. Like someone, let me give you an example. Imagine a murder has occurred and I am the judge. As the judge, I give that person, the murderer, I give him a death sentence. But this is in effect death for death. In a way, it is death for death. But this does not serve as justice. And therefore, you see, what is justice is that the person, the legal process takes time. And this time allows the victim's family to forego any sort of, uh, what should I say, any sort of animosity that they might have towards the perpetrator. And finally, when the judgment comes, say life imprisonment or hanging till death, etc., capital punishment, it comes at a distance. And therefore, with the distance comes a sort of objectivity that, okay, this is now justice. But if immediately on the first hearing or the first trial, if everything is proved and the person is allotted a death sentence, then what will happen is that that distancing will not come, and therefore that justice will not be done. Now you see what happens is therefore that it is often said that justice should not be rushed. A rushed justice is often injustice. Now, therefore, tenderness is necessary. You have to take into account the human component, the human quotient. For example, if you read the Indian Penal Code or the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, you'll see that if somebody is coming to murder me, if I have proper, if I uh, fear for my life, that my life is being threatened, I can obviously retaliate. I can obviously retaliate. That will not be constituting a crime because self defense is my right. What happens is that, therefore, when a judge is judging a situation, he has to see 10,000 things. He has to take into account the human component and everything. And therefore, he has to have compassion. This is very important. So, the office of ruling must be an office of tenderness. And pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. I'll implore you to see one thing, that Ulysses refers to his household gods. And look at the word gods. The G is in small. Okay. But a little later, when he is talking about his adventures and exploits, look, he says, not unbecoming of men that strove with gods. Here, God's G is in capital. Therefore, you see, there is a duality in Ulysses. There is a sort of double standard, if I may say. So, look, meet adoration and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. So, Ulysses, for the first time, talks about his desire to actually leave. In the earlier stanza, we were getting hints, but now he very clearly states that he is going to leave. And look, he says that Telemachus will pay the daily respects, the oblations to my household gods. Since I have wrought and thought and fought with gods, therefore they have become my comrades, and therefore the G is in small. And then look, for a moment, with this full stop, Ulysses realizes that Telemachus has the capacities which he himself lacks, despite becoming uh, synonymous with the Trojan War, despite becoming enumerated in history as one of the greatest heroes of all time. Ulysses lacks the power to sustain anything. He can seek something new. He can go into adventures. He can destroy, but he cannot sustain. Just conquering a land is not enough. You need to sustain that land. You need to make that land thrive. And Ulysses realizes that does not have that capacity. But Ulysses also realizes that he cannot let this realization bog him down because he has to go out. And therefore, in 1 second, he dismisses Telemachus and his greatness by saying, he works his work, I mine. So we are two different people. He does his part of the job, I do the part of mine. And this becomes very interesting because there is an alienation that is already taking place. There was an alienation that had taken place with his wife, and now there is an alienation that is taking place with his son. So, this was the part two, and now we come to the third and final part. There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. There lies the port. So look now, Ulysses is maybe standing near the shore, and he's now pointing at the port, that there lies the port. The vessel puffs her sail. Now look, the ship is puffing its sail. Here, the image is of impregnation. The ship's sail looks like a pregnant woman's belly. So, as if Ulysses, with his desire, has impregnated his vessel, and the adventure will be the uh, impending child. So, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. In this line, many thinkers and critics have observed that Ulysses quite realizes that this will be his last voyage and that he will not return from this voyage. And therefore, in this line, there gloom the dark, broad seas. There is a sort of a negative energy in this line. And look, you cannot quite read it in any other way but in a very baritone voice. There gloom the dark, broad seas. And there is a depth. This line contains the depth of the sea itself. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads, you and I are old. So now he addresses his fellow mariners. Now, in reality, according to Homer, by this time all his mariners were dead. But here, let's assume that for the argument of the poem, his mariners are alive. So he is calling out to his mariners, and he is once again recounting to them the adventures that they have gone into, the exploits that they have undertaken in life. So look, he says, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me. So his mariners have toiled with him, worked with him, thought with him, and fought with him as well. But he does not mention the act of fighting because that takes away from him a little bit of his glory. That ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine. So in good times and bad times, you have all supported me. You have stayed with me in thunder and in sunshine. So when the days were good, you stayed with me. When the days were bad, you have stayed with me. And opposed free hearts, free foreheads. By free hearts, he means free people. By free foreheads, he means free destinies. You and I are old. So now comes a calm acceptance on the part of Ulysses that his mariners and he both have grown old. But look, he says, old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all. But still, the old age has its own honor and its own work. Here you see Ulysses becomes very uh, here Ulysses comes very close to the rhetoric that is there in many of the uh, poems that we see. Uh, I'll just show you one or two. I'll show you one. One is enough. Too many ones are not needed. Wait, this poem. I hope you can see this. This poem is W.B. Yeats's poem, An Acre of Grass. The poem begins like this. It's a very small poem. Picture and book remain an acre of green grass for air and exercise. Now strength of body goes, midnight an old house where nothing stirs but a mouse. So he is an old man in an old house. My temptation is quiet. Here at life's end, neither lose imagination nor the mill of mind, consuming its rag and bone. This will be bone, okay, not bonk. Rag and bones can make the truth known. And then look, he celebrates old age. Up till now, he was sort of in a sort of in an acceptance of his old age. But now, look, he says, grant me an old man's frenzy. So the old man is the wise philosopher as well. And therefore, he calls this an old man's frenzy. And by frenzy, he is loosely referring to the Platonic term, the term that Plato used for inspiration, enthusiasmos, what we call loosely divine madness. So grant me an old man's frenzy, myself must I remake, till I am Timon and Lear, or that William Blake, who beat upon the wall till truth obeyed his call. A mind Michelangelo knew that can pierce the clouds, or inspired by frenzy shake the dead in their shrouds. I think these two lines are very important and relevant to our poem, Ulysses, or inspired by frenzy shake the dead in their shrouds. Forgotten else by mankind, an old man's eagle mind. You see, here we see Ulysses as old man's eagle mind. So look, despite a calm acceptance that we are old, he says old age had yet his honor and his toil. So old age still has its honor and its own work. Death closes all. But once we die, it's all done. But something ere the end, ere means before. But something before the end, before we die, let us do something which is very interesting. Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. Sorry, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. And look here, the G is in capital because now here he has to celebrate his exploits. So he proposes that they need to do some work that is not unbecoming of men that have strove, fought and thought and wrought with gods. And then look, from this section, it becomes very apparent that Ulysses realizes that he will not be able to return from this journey. Look from here. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. Okay, so look, let us read. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Look, here we have an assertion that Ulysses' life is coming to an end, and this is his last voyage. He shall not be able to return from here. So look, he says, the lights begin to twinkle from the rocks, as if the sea is calling him into uh, his last voyage, his last act of greatness. The long day wanes. So just like his life, which has been a long time, the long day also comes to an end. The slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Here, the reference is to Sophocles. If you read Sophocles' Antigone, there you will see that there is a chorus, and the chorus talks about how the caves underneath the seas make several sounds and tell about the mysteries of life and the universe. Here, the reference is to that. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. So finally, he lets his inclination known to his men. He wants to find a newer world. And look, he says, push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. So what happens is that if you go by boat, you will see that what does the boatswain do? The boatsman, what does he do? First, the boat is on the kept around the shore. You get on the boat, and then the boatman or the ferryman takes that oar and he pushes the boat off from the ground. So push off and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. Back then they had long oared boats, so everybody used to sit in a row and they used to row the boat with the oar. So, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. So, by the sounding furrows, he is referring to the giant waves, the huge waves that are there. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset. So, as I have already said, that here Ulysses is referring to the Ptolemaic universe where the flat earth existed, and just beyond the Herculean pillars, the sun and the stars used to take their bath at the end of the day into the sea. So, to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. That reference is given here. It may be that gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. So, look, it may be that the gulfs will wash us down. Here, Tennyson is deliberately referring to Dante's Inferno. If you have seen the previous video, there I have explained this reference. So, please watch that as well. It may be we shall touch the happy isles. So, maybe we will go to Elysium, the Greek heaven, and there we shall meet with Achilles, our dear friend whom we knew. Okay, so there are two possibilities. That one is that we will reach heaven and be commemorated in history, or we will go down into oblivion. But Ulysses wishes to take this gamble and he wishes to do something, just something before his final demise, because he realizes that it is better to bet all that you have into one gamble of action rather than actually rotting there in the island of Ithaca and becoming inactive. Okay, so now let's read. Though much is taken, much abides. This line is very interesting. He says that time has taken its toll on us, but still there is time left. Death has not come yet, so there is still time. Although much time is taken away from us, but there is still time. So, though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not that strength which in the old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. So, time has taken its toll on our bodies and our minds as well. Earlier, when we were young, we could shake the heavens and earth with our exploits, with our bravery, with our uh, greatness. Now we cannot do that. Let's accept it. But that which we are, we are. We are still great old men. That nobody can take away from us. Now, my grandfather, he was uh, in the military, and he was posted uh, during the Second World War. And there was a small grenade incident, and one of his friends, he just recently died last year at the tender age of 105. Ajay Dadu. Ajay Dadu lost his arm saving my grandfather. There was a grenade, he picked it up and he tried to throw it at the enemy, but midway it blasted with his hand, gone. He did not have his left hand. So my grandfather loved him a lot. He always used to say that just because of him, I am alive. So we have heard these stories of the Second World War and all. Now look, my grandfather has passed away some 29, 30 years ago. Okay, and I was a child when I used to hear the stories from him. Later, I heard more stories about him from my father and from my relatives. I have very vague memories of him. So, one thing that is there, nobody can take away from him that he belonged to one of the bravest generations of uh, people in India. Because how many people can actually boast that they have participated in one way or the other in one of the great, I shouldn't call it a great event of human history, but yes, it had its implications. Say, I know of certain people who have fought in the Kargil war and all, and they have done this to protect their own country. So there is glory in that. In any case, so look, what Ulysses tries to tell his friends is that look, we are great old men, and nobody can take this away from us. That which are we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate. So we are one in that we have equal temper of heroic hearts. We are heroes. Nobody else can claim as much. We are all heroes. We can celebrate ourselves as heroes. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate. Time and destiny have made us weak, but strong in will. Our will remains equally strong. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So we will keep on striving, we will keep on seeking, maybe we will find, but certainly we will not eat. Now look here, the way that this is a very positive reading of the text, but another idea is equally important. That is, look, the way Ulysses tries to kind of uh, influence his fellow mariners also reminds you of the kind of brainwashing that in Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan was trying to do with the rebel angels in Book 1. First, he brought Beelzebub to his side, and then he started addressing all the rebel angels, and they soon uh, followed him, they reacted to him, and so on and so forth. So, look here, what happens is this last line becomes very interesting: to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Look, striving for greatness is the pinnacle of human feature. That is a very, very human phenomenon. To seek. Seeking is a little lower than striving. To find. That is, you are not seeking glory. You are. The first thing is that you are striving for glory. The seeking is something that is. Look, you can strive for something which is even impossible, but you cannot seek the impossible. You seek something which is possible, which is existing. So it's a little lesser. You can certainly find something which is there. So it's even more uh, specific and therefore a little bit lesser. And not to yield. That is, no matter what happens, we will not leave our post. This almost reminds you of that satanic dictum where he first wants to wage war, then he says that we will wage war by force or guile. Then he says that our sole duty will be to pester God. So there is a gradual descent, and therefore you see that there are satanic overtones in Ulysses's arguments. But nonetheless, one thing remains very common throughout Ulysses is that what Yeats says in his last line of An Acre of Grass. Let me quote this line: "An old man's eagle mind." That is what Tennyson's Ulysses possesses. So this was all that I had to say about Tennyson's Ulysses, and we will stop here today. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. I'll be very happy to answer. From this, maybe we will move on to Dover Beach. Let's see. Take care. Have a good day.